Yeah, 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 yeah. If you see my face, my love.
Special request for the rumba, the slow one that just ended. Help us, please. Can you share the rumba that has just ended? The slow one, ile bila jasho.
I'm Wankyo Jacqueline Chacha. I'm a teacher. You find that most in Kuria communities, they believe that girl child is not entitled to education, but boy child is supposed to be taken to school for education. When I was in class 5, we were so many girls in our class, but we had a holiday that we were promoted to class 6. It was during circumcision, December holiday, And most girls, they went through FGM. So after that, when we were opening in January, they never reported back to school. Some were married, others were just at home. They never continued their schoolwork. And when I meet them outside there, I pity with them because they're not doing well. So this thing made me to feel like girls need to be talked to so that they can gain that knowledge about education and not focus about being married.
You find that girls who clear primary and transit to secondary, you find that we have around 40 or 50% transiting.
In the Kuria community, they believe that if you are a girl and you have not gone for a FGM, you cannot open the gate for people to pass. You cannot go to the vegetable garden, that those vegetables are going to dry up. So if they hear about that, they feel that, so I have to go through this one so that I can be married. We have youth working group where we meet the stakeholders. On Wednesdays, we have guiding and counseling where we meet with the girls, we guide them. We tell them more about this child marriage, FGM. So we talk to them, we educate with them, we tell them the importance of a girl to be educated. So they can give you the challenges that they're passing through, so you assist them on how to handle them.
I would love to see our young girls standing up and speaking up to their rights.
I'll be sharing out my story to them, and I believe that through my story, they will get something from me and they will change.
Tumesaidiane kuhamasisha watu wetu kwamba ndoa za mapema si nzuri kwa sababu zinatuletea pia umaskini na vitu zingine zenye si za kawaida.
Tuna programu kama sisi inaitwa Youth Mentorship Program. Tunaalikanga wale watu ambao tunajua kwamba ni wataalamu wa mambo kama haya kuongelea mambo kama hayo. Kama kuna kipindi tumealika watu kutoka Msichana Empowerment wakakuja wakaongea na vijana wetu. Pia tunaalika pia watu wengine. We need one another.
DJ unaniangusha hapi. Golden team. Ndio tuko. Hapa ndio tuko. Welcome. Ndio tuko. Sisi hapa ndio tuko. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, people. That is wonderful. That even cheered me up quite a bit. You've seen Mzee Zephania and his moves. We've seen this guy, we know. Now we know. Welcome people to the afternoon session. It is important. And please, if you feel like you're falling asleep, I'm very good at not making you sleep, so I can stand in front of you and look at you for a long time. Then you don't sleep. So I hope you will not. Because, you know, like, it's true. So we just look at each other. So you don't sleep. But I hope we are not going to sleep. Let us listen to the next session. When you get into unpacking numbers, when you get into unpacking data, when we want to analyze, because we know what is not counted can't be accounted for, isn't it? We want to understand statistics. We want to understand where we are in terms of our status. We want to understand, because when you have numbers, it informs how you intervene. So it is important that we put that into perspective. And I do hope, Sharon, that our sister is online waiting for us. Sharon, have we confirmed that? Arwin is online waiting for us. So ladies and gentlemen, kindly please, we take this part on taking stock, part one. There's a lot that we left incomplete in the other session before we broke for lunch. But we will have time to interrogate and discuss a little bit more. Remember, we did not even interrogate the youth panel properly, isn't it? So we will have time to do that. But coming in now, please welcome Arwin Finney from Girls Not Brides, who is going to make a presentation right now on latest data and emerging trends. Arwin, please take it up from here. Thank you, Joyce Mdachi, for appreciating our beautiful Rumba. We are all rounded here, dancing as well. We are a winning team. Thank you, Sharon. Okay, Sharon, thank you. Arwin is on. Is she joining? Mtoto News, Arwin needs the right to actually come in to present. Dennis, Arwin is on standby. Okay. We hope the interpreters are also on standby. Take this time to breathe a little bit. You can sit back on your chair, against your chair, sit back while Arwin comes up. Sit back. Let me teach you something nice. Close your eyes, put your phones down. I swear there was life before mobile phones. I promise. Sit back on your chair, against your back handle of your chair. Just sit back and try to breathe. But I need you to pull your breathing. Sit back, close your eyes quietly. I need you to pull in, breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. So here we go. 1, 2. Hold it. And out through the mouth. Again, pull in. And out through the mouth. The third time, pull in. And out through the mouth. Move your neck from side to side with your eyes closed. It helps as Arwin gets prepared. I think Arwin is ready. But move your neck side to side, side to side. Just sit back, lean back. Imagine that Mildred is a very nice opera singer from Brazil with a nice voice and doesn't make noise. She sings gently. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. A big clap, 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 clap. Welcome, Alwyn. Please take it up.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
And can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, and thank you for welcoming me. I'm Arwen Finney. I'm working in the learning team of Girls Not Rights based in London. I'm the Senior Data, Evidence and Policy Officer. I'm going to talk a little bit about trends in child marriage globally and how East Africa fits into those trends, and some related gender indicators. So I'm going to cover a little bit of background, first of all, to start. So an overview of key concepts in child marriage data, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about trends in East Africa specifically, and in each. So, first of all, child marriage, what exactly is it and where does it happen? So, first of all, just to give a bit of background, data on child marriage usually comes from nationally representative surveys, which are done every 3 or 4 years. And people often think that UNICEF is the one who collects the data, but it's actually only UNICEF's role to validate that data and to put it into the global database. Most of the data is actually collected by national governments and sometimes with funding from UNICEF or from USAID's DHS program. The standard indicators that we typically use when we're talking about child marriage are the proportion of girls aged 20 to 24 who are married before the age of 18. And this is referred to as prevalence. And this is the SDG indicator. And it's important to understand that we always use this indicator asking women who are currently aged 20 to 24, because if you ask girls who are currently teenagers, so girls who are 15, 16, 17, they might answer that no, they're not married, but they could still go on to get married before they turn 18. So the proportion of women and girls aged 20 to 24 is considered more reliable. In terms of absolute numbers, burden is the term that we use. So this is the absolute number of girls that are marrying within any country. So if you are a government minister, each of these indicators will be useful for different things. Prevalence will tell you how common child marriage is, so it will maybe give you more of an indication about the societal view of child marriage, how common it is, how accepted it is. Can you hear me? Okay, I will slow down. No worries. As I was saying, each of these indicators is useful for different things. So prevalence will tell you how common child marriage is within your country, but burden will give you a sense of the scale of the problem that you need to address. So if you are an education minister, for example, it might be more helpful to have a sense of the numbers of girls who are married or the numbers of girls who need access to health services. So there are other sources of data as well, which might use different indicators, and these might capture more about girls' experiences, but these are the two standard indicators, and these are the indicators that I'll refer to in this presentation. So to give a kind of global overview, child marriage typically involves a girl under the age of 18 with an older male, but actually child marriage is any formal marriage or informal union in which at least one of the parties is under the age of 18. So boy child marriage also does happen, but it's much less common than marriage involving girls under the age of 18. And in terms of global burden, 650 million women alive today were married before the age of 18. The overall global prevalence figure is 19%, but you can see that within different regions of the world, there is vastly different levels of prevalence. So at the moment, prevalence is highest in sub-Saharan Africa at 34%, but actually it's very different between West and Central Africa and East and Southern Africa. So it's lower in East and Southern Africa. 28% in South Asia, lower around 22% in Latin America and the Caribbean. And one thing that I think is also important to understand is that prevalence in the lowest income countries is double the global average. And even within countries, often girls who come from the poorest backgrounds are much more likely to marry before the age of 18 than girls who come from wealthier backgrounds. So there's very unequal outcomes depending on level of wealth. To talk a little bit about trends over the past 20 years, there's a lot of positive news. So there have been large declines globally. So if you look at the yellow line, you can see that there's a clear decline in prevalence of child marriage over the past 20 years, which is good news. But the progress has been unequal across different regions of the world. So by far and away, the biggest declines have been in South Asia. So you can see on the left-hand side, sorry, around 60% of girls were marrying before the age of 18 20 years ago, compared to less than 30% today. So massive progress in South Asia. And in Eastern Southern Africa, the region we're focusing on today, you can see that there has been some change as well. So there has been progress, but it's not been as dramatic as in other parts of the world. So to go into child marriage in the African context more specifically, as I said, sub-Saharan Africa as a whole is now the region of the world which has the highest prevalence of child marriage, and the declines have been slower than in other parts of the world, particularly South Asia. However, the declines have been stronger in East and Southern Africa than in West and Central Africa. One thing to understand as well, though, is that because of how slowly child marriage is declining, and growth in population, it means that the region of the world which will have the biggest number of child brides in future will likely be sub-Saharan Africa, compared to South Asia, which is currently the region which has the largest absolute burden of child brides in the world. This slide I wanted to share with you because it shows how the progress has been unequal between girls from different wealth quintiles, even within regions. So if you look at the far right-hand side, the blue line shows the decline, the blue lines in each of the graphs shows the declines in child marriage prevalence among the richest girls. So you can see a sharp decline happening since 1995 to 2020. You can see that among the richest girls, child marriage is becoming a lot less common. But you can see that among the poorest girls, it's actually increased slightly. So the gap between the richest and poorest girls has actually got bigger. So in other words, the inequality of outcome has actually increased in the last 25 years, even though overall child marriage has declined. And if you look at Eastern and Southern Africa, you can see that the divide is even sharper. So although it's only increased a little bit among the poorest girls, it's increased really dramatically among the richest. So this means that the inequality has widened really significantly. And that's something to bear in mind when we're thinking about what we need to do to address child marriage, because it's clear that the girls from the poorest backgrounds are the ones who are being left behind. Going on to the next section now, we're going to talk a little bit about child marriage in each of the three countries and its relationship with other dimensions of gender inequality. Before going on to that, I'm just going to talk a little bit about common drivers. So we know that child marriage is driven by many different things that interact and create different levels of vulnerability for different girls. And really cross-cutting all of them is gender inequality. So we know that social and gender norms and tradition is one part of it. We know that poverty and lack of opportunities, including things like access to education, access to paid employment, livelihood, income generation activities, is a part of it. We know that insecurity, so in terms of fragile contexts, things like humanitarian displacement, droughts, things that increase families' economic insecurity, this can also drive child marriage. We know that adolescent pregnancy can also act as a driver, particularly where girls do not have access to contraception and comprehensive sexuality education. And we also know that gender-based violence can be a driver. But really underpinning all of these things is also the gender dimension, which I'll talk about a little bit more after going into the context for each country. And this is just explaining some of the consequences. So we know that child marriage has cross-cutting impacts on girls. It's a human rights violation. It impacts on their education. It impacts on health. It's a driver of adolescent pregnancy, as well as sometimes a consequence of adolescent pregnancy. It can lead to increased levels of violence, physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. It can increase poverty, and it can cost economies large amounts of money as well, even trillions of dollars, according to the World Bank study that was done on the economic impact of child marriage a few years ago. And it can also increase inequality in terms of limiting future prospects, both for work and for making decisions within the household and in other aspects of girls' lives. So, going on to talk about the context in each country. So it's quite interesting. Each of the three countries is a little bit different. So in Uganda, you can see that there has been really, really significant declines in the last 25 years, which is really good news. So currently, around 34% of girls marry before the age of 18. This is based on the survey that was done in 2016. And if you compare that to even 2011, which was 5 years before, 40% of girls were marrying before the age of 18, and looking further back, 54% in 1995. So Uganda is actually a country that has made a really significant amount of progress. So that's something to be celebrated. And also food for thought to understand why has this changed, because always understanding why change has taken place in the past is useful for us to be able to think about what are the types of approaches that we should be focusing on in order to try and prevent more child marriage going forward. And also you can see clearly here that the prevalence of marriage before the age of 15 has also halved. And we know that child marriage at younger ages has even worse consequences for girls. So this is particularly good news. So lots to celebrate in Uganda. In Tanzania as well, there have also been substantial declines in the last around 15 years. So the last survey was 2004. Sorry, the furthest away survey that I looked at was 2004. So in the 10 years between 2004 and 2015, child marriage went from being around 41%, so 4 in 10 girls marrying before the age of 18, to around 3 in 10. So this is a 25% reduction. So it's pretty significant as well. In terms of the prevalence of marriage before the age of 15, not so much of a change, but child marriage at early ages in Tanzania, even 15, almost 20 years ago, was already quite uncommon. So as well, this isn't such a large problem as it was 20 years ago, for example, in Uganda. So again here, quite a lot to celebrate, substantial decrease in child marriage at before the age of 18. In Kenya, it's a little bit different. In Kenya, there hasn't actually been as much change over the past 20 years, but you can see that as well, 20 years ago, so looking back to 2003, so 19 years ago, child marriage was already relatively low compared to the other countries. So around 25% of girls were marrying before the age of 18 in 2003. And this is compared to 23% in 2014. So not really a huge amount of change in Kenya, but already child marriage was less common to begin with. And it's a similar story among girls marrying before the age of 15. Not really a huge change between 2003 and 2008 and 2014. So going on to talk about child marriage and other dimensions of gender inequality, this table just gives a quick summary of some of the other aspects of gender inequality that are typically measured in these large-scale demographic surveys. And it's quite interesting, the comparison that it gives between the different countries. So you can see that the adolescent birth rate, so child marriage is at the top. We already just talked about this. Adolescent birth rate, you can see, is relatively high in each of the countries, but it's lower in Kenya than it is in Tanzania and Uganda, lower by about about a quarter. FGM is most common in Kenya compared to the other countries, significantly more common in Kenya. And this is based on the percentage of women and girls aged 15 to 49 who report having undergone FGM. So it's not looking at girls under the age of 15. You get slightly different results if you look at each of these two different indicators. In terms of intimate partner violence, It's pretty similar across the 3 different countries. This is based on women of all ages, but we know that marrying before the age of 18 increases a girl's risk of experiencing intimate partner violence, whether it's physical, sexual, or emotional abuse. And in terms of sexual and reproductive health decision-making, so this refers to the ability to decide to use contraception and to make decisions about your own healthcare, as well as the ability to refuse sex with your husband. So you can see that in each of these countries, it's around half, a little bit more than half in Uganda, of women and girls of all ages saying that they're able to make these decisions about their own health. So still quite a lot of women, significant proportion, who say that they can't. And then this slide, I think, was an interesting one as well, to just show aspects of discrimination in the family obstructing gender inequality. So this is based on the SIGI report from 2021, which is a quite significant gender-related report that comes out every year. And you can see that for Africa, overall about 68% of girls and women report experiencing discrimination within the family. And this goes a little bit more deeply into aspects of decision-making within the family. So things like the decision to go to school, the decision to engage in paid labor, decisions to be able to make decisions to do with your own healthcare. So this is looking at all the dimensions of decision-making within the family household. So you can see that, again, it's a little bit different between the different regions of Africa. East Africa, around 68% of women reporting experiencing this kind of discrimination. So a little bit lower than in Central Africa and North Africa, but a little bit higher than in Southern Africa. And so I'm going to wrap up here. I feel I've been talking a lot, but to recap, child marriage has declined in each of the 3 countries. In Kenya, a little bit less, but more significantly in Uganda and Tanzania. But we know that it's linked to other aspects of gender inequality. And it would be useful, I think, when thinking about how to approach addressing child marriage, to build upon what can we learn from the declines that have been achieved in Uganda and Tanzania in particular, and how does child marriage relate to other aspects of gender inequality in each of the different countries, and what sort of approaches might be useful to address child marriage in tandem with some of those other things, such as FGM and female decision-making and autonomy. So I will stop there and invite people to ask questions.
Thank you very much, Irene. A big clap for this very important presentation. Always mind-blowing to look at numbers and to look at percentages, to put everything in perspective. Sometimes we are working while grappling in the dark without knowing, but it is, in my view, quite encouraging to see numbers dropping on child marriage in all our 3 countries, at least, even though I will stand to see the numbers still high on issues FGM. So I want to open this discussion to the floor so that we can engage, Irene, on what your thoughts are from the presentation. And those online also, we are looking out for your communication, and we will give you a chance. So let us start. I have you want to respond? That's one. Anybody else, as you're thinking through numbers? Are the numbers so stressful in your head, Moses? It's eating up your head a bit. Let's do the calculations. Remove the pen and let's do the calculations. So let's see how this goes. When we look at the numbers on child marriage, it's low in Kenya. It's about 21%, or is it 23%? But then it depends with communities. When we look at the northern region, then it's around 90% and above there. So it's regional based. So sometimes it's also good to, we can get to the data more, concrete. Like I'm sure even in Uganda and Tanzania, there are some communities that are more practicing and some that are not practicing. I hope in the future we can even be able now to come down to, the northern per region. Is it increasing? Is it reducing? Are we having any impact in those regions in terms of accelerating the end child marriage?
Thank you. So about going really specific on the regions with their diverse way of how things are. Do we have any other? Yes, Moses.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing the data around child marriage. And I was excited to hear that things are improving in Uganda, though we still remain really the worst in terms of the figures. But also I think for this purpose for us to learn, I think we would be interested, like my colleague I think has said from Kenya, that there are some regions that you find within a given country that they still have very high numbers. And the others, they're not there. But then when you look at the general picture in the country, you might think we are fair, but you find a section of communities is actually worse off.
So does it mean we should look out for those communities where the numbers are still?
I think it means that as people on the ground, we need to, and also probably Girls Not Brides or all of us working under that umbrella, and also to see how do we get this data from districts or small regions, so that, because many of us are working there, right? And sometimes it's very hard to convince our governments, especially the subnational governments, that there is an issue when we don't have the data. And I think we need to work, how do we build the capacity of organizations to be able to capture that information on the ground so that we can use it for advocacy. But also I think what I wanted also to see come out very clearly are the interventions or specific contributors to reduction in some countries. In Uganda, what is that is contributing to reduction? In Kenya, what's that's contributing to stagnation, I think, if anything? And so that we know that we can start testing probably some of these interventions that are making some contribution. Because at the end of the day, we want to see the numbers really go down.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Irene, do you want to say something as we pick in the next questions? I think that like Moses brings out, I don't know, how do we get the data from the ground? Yeah, maybe you say something, you get 3 more questions. Yeah.
So I completely agree with folks because hi Moses, I hope you're well. And this is a challenge. So the data within the National Health Service basically doesn't break down to the subnational level. So I think that is something that we need to think about, whether it's new data that can be collected or whether it would be possible actually to go back to the authors of these reports and ask for that data to be provided in a segregated way, because it may in fact exist. Coming back to as well the point about the levels of wealth and how child marriage is clearly continuing to be more common among girls from the poorest communities than the richest. I expect that there would be an overlap as well with subnational levels. So in terms of the richer communities and the richer districts within each country would probably have to lower prevalence of child marriage than the districts and the regions which are particularly poorer. I think it's important to think about it in terms of geographical regions, but also in terms of other ways that data can be segregated to understand which girls are the ones which are most at risk of child marriage and which are the communities and girls where actually it has reduced significantly. And as Moses was saying, to understand why it has declined where it has.
Of Uganda out of 2016 that we should have up-to-date data, and I think there is a similar question to that Also, there is a question about, Festo says, my worry is that statistics is a little obsolete. What do we do to have statistics up to 2021? And Dorcas Amakobe agrees that the data here is from way back. Do we have an indication whether the situation is as presented in the various countries? Arun, do you think there is this very urgent need for us to update the data that we have as it is now?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. So actually, typically these surveys are done every 3 to 4 to 5 years. So I think 2016 it's not too out of date, but it's definitely time for another survey to understand what has changed in that time period. So I actually think quite strongly that there are many countries which are lacking in this up-to-date data, and there's an advocacy piece of work to be done around lobbying the national government to actually put funding and resource into collecting these surveys frequently, so that there is every 5 years a new survey which allows you to compare how change is taking place over time. So in summary, yes, I agree, and I think there's a piece of advocacy work to be done probably in each of the countries to encourage the government to do another of these types of surveys, so there's more up-to-date data.
From plenary, Sharon, from your side.
So just to talk on the data is not real time, like even for Kenya it's for 2014. So, and I think we had a census in 2019, so probably should be able to have the most current data to be able to use.
Okay, thank you. Nehemiah from Uganda. There is one underlying factor that I've picked. Mine is not a question. When you see data, figures never lie. And the biggest driver here, I think, is poverty, because as we saw, child marriage is going down in the well-to-do families in some societies. So I think as civil society, what we pick from this data and what we should go and look at and see what we can put in our strategic plans is how do we incorporate issues of economic empowerment to families in our work. Because I've seen where goats can save a child from getting married because a goat has helped that family to get some money and buy books, scholastic materials, send this girl to school. So I think as civil society, we need to go and see how we put issues of economic empowerment in our strategic plans. Thank you very much.
We have one more.
Yeah, so thank you very much for the data that has been shown in the presentation. However, I'm a bit skeptical on the realities compared to the current situation, particularly whom we come from communities where child marriage is at rampant. I think as civil society organizations, still, we have a long way to go in order to assist our dear girls and rescue them from the situation. Child marriage is still happening because the WHO in the year 2017 came up with statistics that for our country, Tanzania, it was 37%. Nationwide. So my appeal now to girls, not brides. Could you please connect with UNICEF or other international organizations to find a way on how to advocate for an extensive study or an extensive research on how far have we gone with ending child marriage in East African countries. Because talking of 31%, while still our girls are married off in big numbers, it is bringing up some questions of which, as activists or partners whom we want to see, girls are kept in school, girls are becoming doctors, girls are becoming lawyers, instead of being married at that very early age. Still, we have to table a discussion to see how we can do better than relying on these statistics which are not up to date. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Although we do acknowledge that the statistics, from whichever point, at least helps to give you a rough idea, we do acknowledge that we need to update the statistics, and we sure will, but from whatever point gives us a rough idea as to what our status is. Thank you very much for that. One more?
Yes, Asante sana. Mine is very short. I just wanted to know the criteria, indicators during the data collection. How did they define child marriage to reach that data? Because I know when you look at the national surveys in Tanzania, it's not like there's a definition of child marriage. You say like, how do you get the percentage there?
Right.
Yeah.
The criteria and everything. Arwin, do you want to? Okay, can I take one more? Then Arwin, you come in.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you very much. This is Nana from Forward. What I see is that the common drivers of child marriage actually are quite clear. And what it does mean is that in terms of a strategy, we have to look at the different and multiple issues, because you can't just look at poverty and not deal with gender-based violence, particularly sexual violence and adolescent pregnancy. So these issues are equally important in adopting a strategy that will be more comprehensive. What I'm really concerned about is the girls aged marriage before 15 years. I think we need to have clearer data, especially around that age group, because I think in Tanzania it says 5% in 2015 and 6% in 2004. Really, after 10 years, there's just been 1% drop, which then means that it is a bigger issue. And I think it's important to have, I don't know whether there is data in country around the breakdown of those under 15, because that's really important, particularly in the hotspot area. So that's something that I'll be really interested, because it's important to tackle these girls because they are much younger and the health impact is actually greater.
Thank you. Thank you. Arwin, would you like to come in now?
So first question, the indicators are taken from all of the DHS and mixed surveys. They ask the same questions to the women currently aged 20 to 24. What age did you get married? Like, by what age did you get married? And so the standard child marriage indicator is getting married before the age of 18. So the child marriage statistics are completely based on that question in each of the surveys. So it's based on the women aged 20 to 24 who responded that they got married at an age that was before the age of 18. In terms of the under 15 marriage, it's the same story. So it's based on the women currently aged 20 to 24 who got married before the age of 15. So something also to maybe flag here is that these are retrospective indicators. So they are telling you about marriages that took place in the past. So particularly for the marriage before the age of 15, if you're asking women who are currently aged 20 to 24, you're asking about marriages which took place a minimum of 5 years ago, potentially up to 9 years ago. So there is an issue with the fact that this data is retrospective, so it doesn't tell you what's happening in communities at the moment. And I think that's something for everyone to think about, because I hear the points about the data being already out of date. And the truth is it's actually even further out of date because it's based on marriages that took place up to 5 years before the time the survey was conducted. I also just wanted to respond to one of the questions in the chat, which was about COVID-19 and the impact of COVID on child marriage. This is something that comes up again and again. And the answer is quite frustrating. And it's related to the point I just made about the data being retrospective. We won't know the impact of COVID-19 on child marriage for another 3 years, because it will only be when girls who were adolescents at the time of the pandemic age into the 20 to 24-year-old cohort that we'll be able to compare how many of those girls got married within the period of the pandemic to the 5-year period before. So there is going to be a data lag, and it will be a long time before we have the answer to the impact of COVID. And in the meantime, I think it is worth considering alternative surveys, as somebody mentioned, to kind of get a sense of what's happening among girls who are currently adolescents and within communities at the moment, because this type of data that child marriage is based on is not intended to tell you what's happening at the moment. It's intended to tell you more about historical trends and how it's changed over time.
From Uganda. Thank you for taking time to write this piece. You say in Uganda we have indigenous minority groups that include the Batwa people of Kisoro district, the Banyabutundi people of Kamungu district, the Bambuti people of Bundibugia district, the Bene people of Bukedia, quite a number there, Karamajong. These people, I guess your question was directed at how they can be incorporated as indigenous communities even within the data process. He talks about the Batwa girls being exploited sexually and also the fact that they are exposed to diseases. He says these people are discriminated due to their socioeconomic status in the community. Which inclusive model of development does Girls Not Brides have for indigenous minorities in Uganda? The question is asked within the context of our data collection. Do you want to respond to that? Maybe anybody from Girls Not Brides, Nerida, or yeah. His question is really about how, maybe within this context, or Moses, you want to pick it up before Nerida responds? Okay, like how are these indigenous communities comprised? Yes, Moses.
Yeah, I think for our work through our members, we are working in across all communities. But of course, like he said, that some of these very communities, they still have some challenges. For example, accessing education. Some of them just moved from their own habitats and they are just in other communities and they cannot even adjust. So while we also work on those, especially the Batwa that Ndundugi, the one is talking about, that it's still a long way for them also to be able to access education and also to be able also to appreciate some of these interventions that are in place to end child marriage. So I think it's a special category of a group that also needs to be given special attention because of the multiple challenges they have. Some of the challenges we have, for example, you realize generally in Uganda, you find that in some communities, majority of children can access education. But in some of these minority groups, it is even very hard because of the language barrier, probably even accessibility in terms of where they're located and all that. So, but I think from his questions that we need to pay more attention to some of these groups that could be significantly adding to the numbers of child marriage in the country.
Right, thank you. Thank you. I think I can take one or two more from plenary, especially regarding Arun's presentation on data. Yeah, at the corner there.
Mine on presentation, I was just requesting for clarification on data if it was conducted just by sampling or it was reached up the grassroots. Thank you.
Your question is the methodology of how that data was collected, right?
Collected and compiled, because I'm saying there is over sampling kind of thing.
Like sampling, okay. Yes. Arun, would you like to expound on that?
Did I understand the question on what was the sampling for the surveys? Yeah, interesting question. So all of these surveys are intended to be nationally representative. So they will involve collection from ideally all different districts within the country and a representative sample of each of those districts. So it's not, intended to just be done in, for example, Nairobi or Kampala. It should include all the different regions of the country. In terms of the methodology, all of these surveys are household surveys. So they always involve somebody going door to door within communities and interviewing the people within the household. And it's always collected on the same day. So it's intended to always be within the same time period and to be nationally representative because it's based on samples from within each of the different regions of the country.
Thank you. Thank you. Is this clear to us? Do we have another question? Please use a mic.
The data is from the demographic health surveys for the different countries. So for me, I think that is the census that is taken every other 4 years or 5 years.
It's not as comprehensive as a census. The census is intended to poll every single person within a country. So it's not intended to be as comprehensive as that. It's intended to be based on a nationally representative sample. So it's not as large scale as a census, which is usually done every 10 years.
Thank you. You want to say something? Okay.
Just something, Mildred. This is Sharon. Thank you so much, Alex, for asking the question about how we're going to incorporate the indigenous people, even as you do programming around ending child marriage. I really like that. And just to enforce what my colleague Moses has said, is that even under Girls Not Brides, we really encourage indigenous peoples and groups to join our movement so that we can be able to sit down together and understand what are the best ways that we can work with them in ending child marriage. So kindly, you can get in touch with Moses Ntenga if you want to be a member under GMB Uganda so that you can continue having these conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. I really want to appreciate this presentation, especially the fact that there is a disparity between the rich, the rich and the poor. So it means we really need to be having targeted interventions to communities where we know they are vulnerable and they are disadvantaged.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think this brings us to the end of this segment, this session with Arun. A big clap for Arun. Thank you very much, Arun. We appreciate that very much. You can see that the discussions get deeper when we have to sit and reflect, put our work into perspective. Sometimes when we want to argue the case for the work that we do, we realize that unless we argue it with facts, with data, with statistics, then they lose the luster that they ought to have. Am I right? Because then you have to, because if we want to raise alarm and say in 6 days we are going to lose about 2,000 girls in Kuria district, you unpack that. And you say because last year, during the wave of circumcision, of female circumcision, we lost this number. Data is extremely important. So with that, people, now we get into the other very interesting aspect of advocacy. How many of us are advocates? Not the ones in court. How many of us are advocates? I've even whispered now because now you're shocking me now. Even the people online, how many of us are advocates? Advocates. Okay, how many of us are not advocates? How many of us are not advocates? It's okay not to be. So we are all advocates. Am I right? We are advocating for something. We are agitating for something. We are pushing for something. And it is okay to be an advocate. Just the same way it is okay to be a feminist. Kaki, believe me. Are you a feminist? Do you want everything better for girls? That's what is a feminist, it defines. You see now how people get confused in the milieu of misunderstanding. Do you want everything better for girls and women in your country? That's what feminists pursue. Actually, not. It's really simple. It's really simple. People want to complicate it, but at the core of it is the issue of equality. I want to talk about advocacy now as I hold the ball in my hand. Advocacy and communications. I happen to be a communications expert. Imagine I am 20-something years. I am a recovering journalist, and yes, I am in storytelling, and I am a women's rights advocate and a Pan-African transformational leader. That is why this advocacy is important. You get my point? Many times, somebody said there that we have to change the narratives and tell our own stories. We must. You know, Jovin, the way you're explaining your area, you're telling your own story, isn't it? And going down to the ground and tell our own stories. But how do we advocate without being able to articulate? What is articulate in Kiswahili? Pendo. Articulate ni nini? Articulate in Kiswahili. To articulate something. You know you can talk about something but you have not articulated. Sasa kuarticulate kwa Kiswahili ni kufanyaje? Kushinikiza. Kushinikiza ni kuemphasize. Yes, mami. Kunyumbulisha. Take your pen and write down, students, please. Kunyumbulisha. Mzee Zefania, umesikia mambo? Yaani wewe inatakikana ukifanya kazi yako uweze kunyumbulisha. Sio kunyumbulisha tena. Kunyumbulisha ni nini jamani ndugu yangu? To simplify, to unpack it. Ndio kunyumbulisha. Sasa ku articulate ni nini? Sio. Kustimulate. Sasa nimewhisper by the way. Uchanganuzi. Unpack. Analyze and unpack. I really want articulate. Because we are advocates, we need to articulate. Yes, mommy. Defend your answer. I need a microphone where you are. Where is the roving mic? It must be that one. Well, but wamesema tuseme kunyumbulisha. Napata ajali ya ulimi nikisema kunyumbulisha.
Kwa nini ni kunyumbulisha? Something like when you're articulating something is complex and you want to explain it, you know, explain it or like segregate it more so that people can understand the facts and everything. So when you say like kuchanganua, it's like you're doing analysis. But kunyumbulisha is something is complex and you want to make it, you know, understandable so that people can understand it more. Yeah.
Sasa basi tujifunze kunyumbulisha basi.
I think okay, mimi niko na mtazamo tofauti. Na yangu ni kusema ni kuchanganua kinagaubaga. As in to simplify it. Kuchanganua kinagaubaga. As in to like analyze it in to the simplest language. So tukichambua kuchambua kinagaubaga, that would be kueleza kwa hali rahisi kinagaubaga. Is to articulate, is to as in explain it to. Yes.
I have a simple question as we move on to this session on advocacy. I'm told you I'm in advocacy by force or fire. Okay? If you're looking at ending child marriage, na hata sio marriage, kwa sababu tunajua marriage watu usikilizana wakaoana. Mimi mpaka leo mjanipa jina lingine. Sawa? What are the three main key issues or challenges or impact, negative impact that you see emerging out of child marriage. What does child marriage do to children? Just give me one word. Kills their dreams. I need a wife to help me. Kills their dreams. Number 2. Yeah? Affect, that's really polite. Yeah. You see, rights is general, and I would want you to unpack it more. Okay, let us stand up. Let us stand up. I want us to write a book. We are going to write a book. Please move your chair or move behind your chair so you have space. My sister Janet, let me tell you, if you remove that jumper, you'll feel very nice. Let me tell you. Hata Cecilia ukiwa hiyo shawl, utakuwa sawa kabisa. Let me tell you, naona. Usijali baba, ina kazi basi. Mimi kiniona kile kitu kina kazi. Go behind your chairs. In communications, in advocacy, when we claim to be advocates, we must be able to articulate issues. Part of articulating issues is communicating for articulation so people understand. Sasa sisi mara nyingi we see ourselves on panels with long presentations. Yani mtu ametoa presentations has how many PPTs? Like 21. That is called death by PowerPoint. You're already killing people with PowerPoint. Are we together? Watu wanakuangalia tu, wameshakufa kitambo wanakuangalia tu. Death by PowerPoint. Issues zetu tukitaka kuarticulate where we fail. You guys go to the communities, isn't it? You guys sit in stakeholder forums, isn't it? You guys sit in policy making platforms, isn't it? Sasa communications on all those places is different, isn't it? Lakini itakubidi wa convince. One of the things we do that actually does not favor us, we love preaching to the converted. You know, Mama, we all understand these issues. We are actually in agreement. You know, none of us here feels that child marriage should continue. None of us here feels that FGM should continue. So we all disagree. So we are all a choir. Soprano wako hapa, alto wako hapa, bass wako hapa, tenor wako hapa. But our work as advocates means you bring in new convertees. Wajui kwaya. Unaisikia pende? Siku zote unaenda kwenye kwaya moja tu. Umewajulisha kina nani? Waje waimbe na wewe. Ambao walikuwa hawaimbi pamoja na wewe. Who have you brought? Mzee Zefania. Usisimame peke yako na mzee wa kijiji. Nani mwingine amemconvince uka-articulate mpaka ule ndio akasema ngoja nimjoin yule mzee Zefania hii makelele yake ya kusema end child marriage. Remember to sing. Is it singing? Because that's where we fail in my view. For starters, wewe mwaka mzima unaandika report to my sister. Wewe unaandika report to all girls not brides, I don't know whatever. Lakini umemtafuta nani akajoin choir? Who have you pulled to join into the choir? Advocacy, storytelling, communications, Jaber. You know, communicate in a way that makes somebody feel, give me a join me, that's for Jaber. We have to communicate in a way that makes people feel that they want to join you. I want to tell you a story, but we are going to write the book together. We are going to write this book together, not only on writing all. We are going to open up your minds. Please don't drop the ball. Please don't drop the ball. Remember Sana. I want to tell you a story about a young woman called Leila. Each story you want to believe it's fine, but I want the story to grow from you. Are you okay, Princess Diana? When you see we've talked about child marriage, kills dreams, destroys health, death. Let's start the story and talk it out. and I throw this ball at you, don't drop the story. Don't give me a boring paragraph. We are advocates. We know the issues that matter in child marriage and FGM. We know. Speak with insight. Speak with analysis. Create it. Make it creative. I'm saying we are creating a book for East African advocates on ending child marriage. Our book is starting with a case study of a young girl called Leila. She's not young now. Listen to me. Let your imagination go. Leila stood in front of the mirror. They're not the experts. You are the expert. You are on the ground. You know the statistics. You know the numbers. So, you know the numbers, you know the problem. You can connect. Kwa sababu gani mnawapa journalists muda wa kuchafulia kazi zenu? Why do you give journalists the chance to make you look like you do not have the ideas and the issues in your head? The training for how to handle One, two, three, and you're naming it. See, you're the experts on the ground. CNN is not expert on the ground, isn't it? So, Dennis age. Okay. Leila stood in front of the mirror. She always did this ritual every Friday, first Friday of the month. She stripped and looked at herself and looked at the damage she had caused on herself. The knife and razor blade marks were now very visible. On her arms, on her thighs, she looked with eyes that were cold as she held the knife again in her hand. And she knew that today again, she's going to cut herself a little bit more, just to deal and numb the pain of the abuse that was waiting to happen from the man claiming to be her husband. Mike, don't flip the story.
Okay. As she took the knife, she remembers all the beatings. She remembers all the hurt, and when she was screaming and crying, and there was no one to offer help or assist her in anything. She remembers the way she has given up many times of moving forward and fulfill her dream of becoming someone in her life.
Even as she touched the knife to start cutting herself again, Leila felt in her heart of hearts that she was tired. It has been years of suppressing a pain that was not going away. She was tired.
And even as she stood before the cutter, the woman who was supposed to chop off part of her body, she wept in tears. And Leila remembers that when you go to the woman who cuts, you do not wear closed shoes. That is how the culture states. And Leila says, look here, but you want to cut me, and I'm in closed shoes. Can we get open shoes first? So the cutter is in shock. Oh my God, how do I cut this lady who has come with closed shoes? She's going to close our culture. And all people are stuck in amazement and wonder.
This flashback of the memory of an FGM situation that he underwent 6 years ago, I felt her senses in a way that pushes Leila to start shaking. As she stares at the mirror long and hard, at this point where she has now graduated and is waiting to step out into the world, Leila started feeling some strength building into her.
And Leila thinks, this happened to my mother. This happened to my sister. This has now happened to me. When does this stop? Who is out there to help us? Who will help my younger siblings? Who will help my children when I get my daughters? I don't want them to go through this pain. This pain must end with me.
Leila realizes as she's thinking that the power that is building within her is pushing her towards action. But Leila is still married to Ahmad, the 75-year-old man who took her in as a fourth wife. Leila is wondering what to do. Her mother, her grandmother, all have urged her to keep quiet and stay in as a good wife.
Leila gradually falls down and she starts crying, reflecting on all that has happened in the past generations, and thought, if only I could make a turn back and look at what has transpired in our family, in our mothers, in our sisters. There's something that I could do to change this situation. So Leila screams as she had some voice talking to her, like a dream, saying, Leila, you can do something. You need to speak out, or you will kill the generations to come. Suddenly, Leila falls off unconsciously.
It is in the darkness of the subconscious of her mind that Leila sees that woman again. That woman in white who is running ahead of her in the dream that has refused to fade. It is in the subconscious of her mind that Leila starts asking herself questions. My mother, my grandmother, my four-grandmother, and she thinks about her children, her two daughters, who are going with her, and they're going to go through the same thing. What will Leila do? Leila sits and knows that there's something about the woman in white who's urging her forward. She closes her eyes and tries to focus.
Leila, while thinking, as she heard a voice telling her that you can do something that you can do to transform more against these violences that you have undergone. And then Leila started thinking of her children's, how, if she won't change, if she continues hurting herself, will it hurt the children or will it serve them? So Leila thought of doing something that is more of inspiring than more of damaging.
Oh. That's how far the story has gone. I want us to finish with Leila with a victory that can help us. Are we together? Sorry, Baba.
Sorry. Raila alifikiria akaona bwana anamsumbua, anampiga. Mwanaume amemkataa kwa sababu pia amekeketwa, hana haja na yeye. Akafikiria kujiua, baadaye akaanza kufikiria labda kuna msichana empowerment inaweza nisaidia. Akasunguka na bado hapo njiani akienda kutafuta msichana empowerment iweze kumsaidia. Hivyo ndivyo naweza sema.
Thank you. Thank you. Please, let's continue. Leila is outside. She's actually on her way now to Msichana Empowerment. In the bus on her way to Msichana Empowerment, the turnboy, the conductor keeps disturbing her and tells her, "Wewe mama, jifunike vizuri," because in her hurry, Leila had forgotten to take her shawl that covers her head and covers her feet. And so the turnboy was not leaving her alone. But Leila did not care. She was focused. Somebody had told her about Msichana Empowerment. She had to get there.
Leila realized there's no way she would get angry and stop talking to the town boy, and realized the town boy is the only one who would be able to help her get to Msichana Empowerment office. So she realized by just trying to bury her problems and just talk to the town boy, she would be able to get help. And that's when she realized that she had already made friends with the town boy, and she would get a solution to get to Msichana Empowerment.
As they approached the stop, Leila started getting bouts of fear. She began to panic. What if somebody saw her and told her husband, Ahmad?
Leila did not only think about her husband, but also what the society will say about her. But deep inside her, she had a conviction to continue her journey to her empowerment. And so she did not look back and continued with her movement.
She continued amidst the fear. The same fear is the one that was propelling her to move, because sometimes fear motivates us do what is best for us. And as she acknowledged this, she realized that she had been afraid for so long. She had only been afraid to act, and today she was acting.
So Leila continues and goes ahead to Msichana Empowerment and looks for someone she can talk to, someone she can trust. And Leila continues to Msichana Empowerment offices and looks for someone she can trust or someone she can talk to and tell her that she's ready to tell her story and not go back or turn back, because she's tired and she wants to make a difference and make the world better for her sisters, young siblings, and her children to come.
But at the gate of Msichana Empowerment, it looks hostile. The watchman looks at Leila very badly and talks to her in a very arrogant way and asks her where she's going or whether she has an appointment. Leila starts shaking. She did not expect to find a man intimidating her at the gate.
Raila,
Tuendelee, tusiharibu kitabu. Kinaandikwa.
Ametembea
baada ya kuwa na machungu ya kutahiriwa, sasa anatafuta mahali anaweza pata msaada. Ameenda kwa Msichana Empowerment, anataka wamsaidie ili maisha yenye alipitia nyanya yake, mama yake na hapo nyuma yasipate tena watoto wake. Kwa hiyo ako mbioni anasakanya Msichana Empowerment imsaidie ili watoto wake na kizazi kijacho kisiweze kuathirika kama yeye jinsi alivyopata shida.
Tusaidie, tumalizie hapa. Ameshafika Msichana Empowerment.
Laila, amefika. Leila has arrived at Msichana Empowerment Korea. She's met with this hostile man at the gate who reminds her of where she's coming from and what she's been running away from. But that works to fortify her efforts and to run even to try and challenge this man, tell him that I do not care. I don't understand why you're harassing me, but I'm here to see somebody to help me. And the man really realizes that, well, this lady has some drive, and I don't think I can stand up against what she's up to. So he shows Leila this lady by the name Robbie, and Robbie is so welcoming and ready to listen to her. She embraces her and she sits her down and she gives her this listening ear, and there is when we find Leila pouring out all that has been in her heart, all that has been troubling her, and she's found a listening ear, and she cannot just believe that it is happening. And that is how the movement to end sexual gender-based violence begins in Korea.
Big clap for everyone. Masieko has decided that he will end the story for us. We have a lot of mishaps in the story. You have delayed Leila so badly at her point of reckoning down there when she should be acting. We have taken a lot of time and personal reflection for years of things that had happened that she should have acted upon. We took too much time with Leila in the matatu, and we grappled so much at the gate with the watchman. What I'm trying to say, when you're in advocacy, you bring out your message loud and clear with a punch. I was trying to steer you back to get a punch. Get a punch. Because people listen to you for a while, then they get tired, then they lose you. So sometimes we lose that punch and many of us have that problem when trying to explain a point. We have powerful points to explain, but we have one sentence that has about 8 conjunctions. Conjunctions are joining words. What is conjunction in Kiswahili? Haya, kiunganishi, joining words, and I'm talking about both spoken and written advocacy. Are we together? Both spoken and written advocacy. Conjunctions is like and, of, but. You see these words? What I tell advocacy people, by the time you have passed the second sentence, the second line of your sentence, start cutting it. If you must continue, do line 2 and a half. If you do 3, you're losing me. I don't know whether you've realized that I talk with a lot of full stops so that it sinks. It helps, but that talking is the same as writing. When somebody's reading your report or reading your advocacy strategy, They can feel it, they can pause and let it think. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a powerful panel. They are very powerful in advocacy. They know themselves. Nehemiah, Janet Roby, if you could move forward, please. For us to, yes, I think for us to just quickly talk a bit about, are we together there? Did I throw in some questions in your mind? So sometimes you write, when I read through reports from advocates such as ourselves, sasa unapata sentence moja, ina line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sijapata full stop. The question you should ask yourself is, when I'm reading it, have I understood? If I have talked without pausing, even locally, and that's why they say try and shorten it in a way that is impactful. Stand there and say tumekuja hapa kwa sababu serikali inaelewa sana. Watoto wetu wanakufa. Wasichana wanakeketwa wanakufa. Mwaka uliopita tumepoteza watoto 2,000. Mwaka huu ninangojea tena tupoteze watoto 3,000. Unaona nimeweka question mark. Sijaongea mambo mengi. Sawa. It is how we speak, how we deliver it, the same way when we write it. Are we together? Inasaidia sana, maanake mara nyingi viongozi kama nyinyi, kina Bwana Chief, kina nani, viongozi wanasimama mbele ya umati. Sasa sisi tunazungumza, lakini yule kiongozi akiongea haja articulate. Communicate, watu wanasikia tu wanasema si ni chief anaongea, wacha tu aongea malize. Ila wewe unatakikana ucommunicate ili uweze kupata wafuasi wengi. Yes. Yes, Nana, you're here. Dennis, saidieni hapa. I know that all of you had been prepared about talking on issues advocacy, influencing for impact, what we need to do, how we need to do them. We have to face the fact that when advocacy fails, then we fail in our pursuit, because communication and advocacy are joined on the hips. If the advocacy approach is weak, communications becomes weaker. Yet we want to communicate so we can change, isn't it? So I would want to start with all of you to just take us through your advocacy experiences that you feel stood out in your work, that you feel this approach was good, it helped us get somewhere. May I have the mics and sanitizer, satanizer, give us the satanizer. And this one also. So take us through and then I'll give you this. The advocacy approach that you feel worked, that it moved the focus from point A to B. Sometimes we are advocating and we are stuck here at A. The way you are stuck with Leila in the room on the floor. The way you are stuck with Leila in the bus. You're not moving, but you need to move. You need to move. So we start with you, Nana, as we come this.
Hello, everybody. I seem to have quite a number of advocacy opportunities, but I'm just going to talk about how we worked to get the bill on ending child marriage. In UK, it is normal for girls to be married at 16 years. And as a result of that, we felt if the UK government was doing a global work around ending child marriage, it should also do, they call it Charity Begins at Home. So our work was as part of the Girls Not Brides UK partnership to lobby for the UK government to take on this issue. So our approach was we've done it over the last 5 years, and it is only this last year that we started seeing results. So we worked with a member of parliament who is with the Conservative Party. We provided information, and I think some of the good parts of it was to have a partnership. So the partnership was critical.
The other issue that was critical, we had experts who had legal expertise. So when it came to drafting the bill, it came to all the legal nuances around what needed to be put into the law, it was the legal experts who provided that support. But what was also very important about this issue is that we had a young woman who had experience of child marriage, for that matter. So her story, her personal story, was very strategic in getting the news. We also did a lot of social media advocacy. We had a plan for all the partners. We were 6 partners to work towards getting this on the agenda of each one's organization. One of the things that we also saw was strategic, that at the partnership level, it was senior members of the organizations who were on board. Very often, you would have younger people who would do the advocacy and they can't make decisions. So it was strategic that we had senior members who could make decisions whilst we were discussing the bill. So I think what has been great was also amplifying the voices in the media. So there was also the print media picking it up, there was social media picking it up, but we also had little campaigns which tried to bring attention to the issue. So while the bill has now gone through Parliament and is now going to be going to the 3rd reading, we are very confident, but we are now at the stage of we do not have control over the final product. How do we have control? And as we speak, I've been listening, responding to emails around the thing just happening now. So it has taken nearly 5 years. It has required a lot of collaboration. It has also required us really pushing the UK government to really make a change, because there is a law on forced marriage, and they thought that was adequate, but it wasn't. The issue of child marriage, where girls can be married at 16 years by parental consent, was just a big issue for the UK. So that is a problem that has been solved as a result of this advocacy.
Okay. Thank you. Now, societal actors, I think it's not working.
Okay, good afternoon. Okay, societal actors, I think I'll be so mean if I don't pass my regards and my appreciation to the organization Msichana Empowerment through Girls Not Brighter. Through this organization, we have been able to do a lot of community dialogues that have been of help to the community, the Kuria community. You realize where I work. This time around, I want to speak by the mouth of the president, because you do not expect the president to come and implement the Child Protection Act. They are implemented through our offices at the sub-county level. So I want to believe that even as I sit here, I'm sitting in the place of the president of Kenya, and through his voice, I'm able to speak an end to FGM and child marriage issues. So that must be noted. We do not have to wait for the president in every conference. Some of these issues are implemented at the sub-county level through us, the children officers in the ground. Probably in your countries, you may not be able to be having such structures, but in Kenya, we happen to be having such structures. So implementation of child protection issues are done at the sub-county level through our offices. As I sit here, I want to believe I'm the President Uhuru's mouthpiece as regards to child protection issues, that is child marriage. So really, I would want to say, in our department, we do not have facilitation in terms of accessing the village, in terms of maybe reaching dissemination of information into the villages. We can only rely on partners. So that is why I pass my regards to Girls Not Bright. Through Msichana Empowerment, we have been able to achieve a lot. Really, I would want to trace my case with the FGM issue. Last year, I'm sure you were well versed with what happened in Korea. We had a very big mass cutting, probably because of the challenge of the school calendar, so stakeholders were not able to contain the situation. However, through the advocacy that we had done, we were able to set up rescue camps. You can be assured we rescued 400 girls through the rescue centers that we had set up. So while we are talking, we should not only look at those girls who were cut, also consider the advocacy that assisted us to rescue a bigger number of girls. I have 86 girls who were cut and were placed in a remand home in Kisii. But 400 girls who were rescued. So that simply takes us back into seeing that there is more achievement towards ending FGM as compared to the other side that we feel like maybe we are not achieving anything. So I want to encourage ourselves here and tell you that through open dialogues, advocacy into the locals where these issues happen, you realize some of these issues like FGM affect the most vulnerable. So reaching them does not really mean that you have to sit in the office and wait for reports there that a girl has been cut. You really have to be in the field there. You have to be in the machinery there to ensure that this girl is not cut. We always say you protect, and if protection fails, you control. So really I would want to say that I trust my energy from what I did last December. I want to believe that I did a lot, because rescuing 400 girls, really I want to feel that I achieved a lot, and it is only through advocacy. Leaving my number when I walk into the village, like we are doing an open dialogue in the villages, I leave my contact there. I tell these guys, here is my number. If you feel home is not safe for you, contact me. I'll be able to assist you and place you somewhere safe until the cut is over. So that really assisted us, because we realized most of the girls whom we committed to the safe spaces, most of them were calling and they were like, Madam, I don't have anywhere to go. My parents have already prepared me for the cut. Where do I go, Madam? So that way I come in. So I want to believe that through advocacy, I've been able to achieve a lot. And another thing that I would want to mention, our office really banks on the regional instrument of like the UNHCR. That is the legal instrument that we use in terms of prosecution of cases. So through that, I'm able to prosecute cases and for children to get justice. We have the best, one of the best legal frameworks. So, which really makes me feel like from where I sit, the office I operate from gives me really that advantage to enjoy the privilege of implementing some of these legal frameworks that we have that are put in place for us to ensure that our children are safe. For example, you know, Kenya is a country whereby we have one of the laws that says Section 32. I think Section 32 of the Constitution talks about when you're looking at me seductively. You've not seduced me, but you are looking at me in a manner that suggests that you want to seduce me. You know, I can sue you. Yeah, so equally that makes us feel like we have the best legal framework in the country that is able to be implemented. If we can only implement some of these laws, then we are able to achieve justice for our children. Because in most cases you find that girls are looked at seductively. But what do you have to do? So I would say, sitting where I sit, the legal framework in Kenya has really assisted me in terms of sensitizing the community and telling the girls about their rights, reaching them. First of all, I'm this person who believes that if we are able to tell our children about their rights, if we are able to tell this child from the time they're 6 years old, that this is what it deserves of you. Someone should not touch you in an improper manner. Someone should not deny your food. Someone should not deny your education from the age of 6. And this becomes a song to this girl. I think sensitization does a lot. I've done it myself, and I believe in the coming years I'm able to achieve a lot. So 2 things that I do in my advocacy: I do open dialogues in the villages and teaching a lot. Sensitization, let the girls know their rights. So really I want to believe that it has been of help in my line of duty.
Thank you, Janet.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Nehemiah from Raising Teenagers Uganda. What has helped us in our advocacy? One, know why you are doing what you are doing. It starts with you. Why are you doing what you are doing? Are you in for money? Are you in for passion? Are you in for change? That's advocacy, number one. That's what drives whatever we do. Number two, we work in alliance. Alliances help. Girls Not Brides Uganda has helped us. It has built our confidence. It has taken us heights. When you work in alliance, it creates more opportunities for you, but it even gives you breathing space. For example, Raising Teenagers is Girls Not Brides coordinator for Central Region, but we have coordinators in Western Region. So when you have issue in Central Region, it's easier to go through that channel and solve that issue, advocate for the issue in Western with the coordinator there. So alliances help. I'm very sure if I had an issue in Kenya, Girls Not Brides Kenya would help me. Another issue, another point that helps us in advocacy is involving champions. Champions, these are people that would feel your cause in communities, because child marriage happens at the community level. So these champions, most of the time, I'll give you examples. These are religious leaders who have platforms. We have political leaders at the grassroots. I don't know where it happens in Kenya. For us, when we are burying in Uganda, the political leader comes, they give him this one, the microphone, speak. So when that political leader feels the cause, when they know what you stand for, they will have that space of talking about those issues. That's advocacy. It's key. Then social media. We are in a generation, we call it digital generation. Look at the numbers we have in this room. Each one of us has a biggest tool, which is a phone, connected with the data and Wi-Fi. What have you used it for the days that you've been here? Reach out to those communities that we are looking for. The donors are following. The people that we are fighting for are following. So why are you holding the phone and you are not using it? Social media, it helps. It's a big tool in helping in advocacy. Then I'll give this as a challenge to us. Most of us come from rural areas, very migrated to where we work from. Even where I work from in towns. How long, how much does it take you to walk to the nearest school? On a good day, how much do you need to walk to your next church? When have you taken time to go to that school and ask the administration that can I talk to students? How much do you need to do that? When have you been at church and you ask to speak to that congregation at church, you yourself who feels you need to stop child marriage? That's when I said it begins with you. The moment you are convinced, advocacy becomes easier for you. When we go to schools, we are lucky that we form clubs. We start with those who believe in our cause, they keep on bringing others. Oh, those ones, they are good, they talk to us about A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z. Before you know it, the club have grown, have multiplied, and you have numbers who take your messages when they go back home, and you find you have pulled many people, many girls back to school. So I think those are some of the key points that we use in our advocacy that I felt I should share with you to take back home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have this question here for the entire panel, When you're doing your advocacy strategies, when you're putting together your strategies for whatever campaign, for whatever advocacy you want to take up, do you involve your targeted stakeholders for your strategy, or you create it and then you deliver it? And also, while you're speaking about that, tell us a little bit more about how your advocacy targets policymakers really, like the explanation you just given, Nana, that brings them to work with you and believe with you in your endeavor. It's an election year in Kenya.
It's an election year in Kenya. Politicians are taking platforms left, right, and center. Janet, these people who want to run for governor and for MP and for whatever, can't we get them to run with the agenda of ending child marriage? Is it difficult? Let's talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
start there with Nana and then come this way. Thank you, my dear.
Thank you very much. Mildred, I think the issue about how we start to develop our strategies, for us at Forward, our focus is almost always evidence-based. What is the evidence? And you saw Euphemia mentioned the study. Peer research is an amazing way of gaining information. So whatever the issue is, we start with the research. So we target the group we're going to work with. We provide training on how to conduct research. We provide training on how to outline the issues. In fact, what was so interesting, and I'll bring the issue of Tarime. We went to Tarime to go and work on child marriage. We started the peer. We wanted 20 girls. They asked us, how many girls do we want? 100? They could get 100 child brides and child mothers, because there are so many. So we said we only wanted 20. I think we ended up working with 16. And when we started the peer, you would group them into groups to bring out the issues. What are the issues? And I was very excited when the girl said, and you have to make it like somebody said, I don't know whether it was Jacqueline said, make it simple. So I said, on my 5 fingers, what are the issues? The first thing that came out was FGM. The second thing that came out was traditional dancing. The third thing was the traditional brew. The fourth was house. And the fifth was child marriage. So it was very much like, how can we just go into this community and say we're just going to work on child marriage? FGM was the tops. So the data and all the research, and when we collected the data, we then worked with the young women to actually showcase the data at the district level. So the chiefs were there, the community officers, as well as the district commissioners, including the health professionals, then listened to these girls. So straight from the beginning, they were hearing from the girls themselves. So before we even did the research, the girls were given the platform to talk about the issues. We do that in the UK as well. In fact, in the last 10 years, when we were doing work on FGM, we had a peer who said, FGM is my issue. Or FGM is always with us. There are 2 studies. One is FGM is my issue, and the other, FGM is always with us. We worked with community women. Most of them were refugees and migrant women. Did the similar study for them to really help us. And on the basis of that, Bristol City Council then took on to do a project on on FGM. A lot of these women, their stories were, after I went through FGM, I was a refugee, I was forced into marriage. So then the links came in. I was affected by domestic abuse, and this has been my story. So again, when we took that approach, it was, we cannot deal with just FGM when women are suffering domestic abuse. When women are migrant women, they are suffering racism. You cannot move that. You have to deal with all these issues. So the work entailed working with policymakers who then enabled us to work with them. Today, the policies in place are in Bristol. Child Protection is working with them. They are working with these community women who have become their advisors in terms of what is happening there. So that's how we've actually worked at different levels to ensure that the evidence is informing it. And peer, I would never give away peer. It's an amazing tool. Yeah.
And on my part, in the Department of Children's Services, normally we have something called Area Advisory Council. This Area Advisory Council normally, like mine now in the sub-county, is comprised of the religious leaders. We have a representation from the religious leaders. We have a representation from the Ministry of Interior, like Chief, as he sits there, and Mzee Zakaria. They are part of the Area Advisory Council. We also have the faith-based organizations, and we have the politicians, one representation. We call them opinion leaders, because we realize a politician, the moment they say, this is the direction we are going, that is the direction everybody takes. So in the area advisory, we include the opinion leaders who are the politicians. We also have someone from the education. We have someone from the health. We have someone from the, at least technocrats, the probation officer. Probations, they deal with the issues of the children, normally counseling and all those issues that pertain to children in need of care and protection. We have someone, the police from the gender desk. We have the SPD. It's a combination of 22 technocrats, so representation from all areas. In this LAC, normally what we do, we will find out from the Zakaria his schedule when they are meeting with the Council of Elders, and we will tell him, can you get for us the women cutters? Because you know, even in Korea, me calling the women leader, the women cutters, the women who perpetrate FGM, I cannot be able to call them. But if Mr. Zakaria right now makes a call, he's able to get them. Actually, even right now as we are talking, we are trying to negotiate our way with the perpetrators of FGM. Through Mr. Zakaria, we want to get those women and give them alternative income generating activity, because they are saying they do FGM because they have nothing to put on their table, so they do it for monetary value. So we are trying to see a way that we can incorporate them, see whether we can give them an alternative income generating activity. And also we will talk to Chief. Chief, in which day are you meeting the baraza? Which day do you have your barazas when you are meeting the wazays? And we will tell him, Chief, when you are meeting these wazays, please pass this message for us. There is a lot of defilement in the village there. How can you assist us to reach these defilers? What penalty can we have for these people who perpetrate defilement on our children? Chief, there is a lot of maybe early marriage in that area. How can you come in and say, in a way of assisting us? The chief will meet the council of the Wazes in his village, in his location, and he will talk to them about it. Also, the religious leader, equally, they will do that. When they're in the pulpit there, at least they spare 5 minutes to pass a message. And this we do it. If a partner comes in, we give a work plan for these activities sometimes. So if we have to move as a whole OSC group, we will go sit down and do a work plan for this partner, give the partner, and then how these activities will run throughout, the partner will facilitate, because we realize we have to move. So this partner will enable us move from this village to the other, and also you realize in some point you will find that people need that, you know, for you to call people and bring them together, there is that facilitation that is needed, transportation. So that is why mostly we rely on partners, and also partners are part of the area advisory council. So really that is what we do. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Do you involve targets? Yes, we do. Otherwise, if you don't involve your target community, your target audience, then what are you advocating for? Where are you getting these issues? So it's very important to involve the targets. Yes, we do. And the approach is, since we deal more with the community, we go down to the community. For example, we do a lot on menstrual hygiene and management. So if I don't go to a certain school, if I don't go to this community, how will I know that girl Jane, not the Jane that is here, lacks a sanitary towel? How will I be able to pick that issue and advocate for it? How will I be able to know that actually Jane got pregnant because a certain border guy bought for her a pad, and after the menstruation cycle, the only option to pay was what? To use her body. So those are the key things that you need to advocate for. And if you don't go to the ground, if you don't go to this community, you will never pick them. You will just be doing, they said we've done this work for 30 years and we expect things to change. We need to change the narrative, go to the targets, go to it. Now, two, we also do the peer-to-peer. You want the message to go, but I'll go with my gray beard, hair round, nice cut beard, and I'm talking to this girl of P7, P6, she will not understand me. But when I take a fellow girl champion to this girl, the message will sink into her head. when I take this girl that I've saved from child marriage, I've taken back to school, and she has made it, that peer-to-peer talk will sink into the head of this girl that we are thinking to go and get married, and she also have now a mentor, a sort of kind. So peer-to-peer is key. Now, it's very important that we should always, as CFOs, not underlook the local leaders. It's very important. Sometimes we have the big uncles who have big vehicles, have big cash, have big money. You go to this community, you don't look at the value of the local leader. These local leaders, they are people believed in by that community. So when you involve them, when they believe in your cause, it will be smooth for you to penetrate, pick issues, then bring them on top. So we use local leaders, we do peer-to-peer, and yes, we go to the communities. Thank you.
Can I just add, one of the things that was very strategic for us was partnership working. So me not speaking Swahili, not knowing anywhere in Tanzania, I had the chance to meet somebody in London who was involved with CDF. And that is how we started the process. So for me, partnership was so central. And at that time, CDF was just starting. So the process required capacity building. It required working with them. And what was really beautiful about the relationship was the fact that when we did the PA, I mean, everything was done in Swahili, in the local language. And it was training of trainers. So we trained CDF, and then while we were in the room, CDF did the training. Everything was done in Swahili. The girls were amazing all of them knew how to write. They wrote all the interviews. So they knew exactly what to do. But the beauty of that was that after it had happened, they'd done the research, the girl said, what next for us? That was the next step, to train them to be advocates for change. So we then had a ready group who understood the issues, who had gone to their communities, who were linked with their communities, and from then on, CDF took the process forward. So it is strategic to build capacity, to engage and partner on a level. It's a UK organization. We see ourselves as diaspora. I go to Tanzania, they speak to me in Swahili all the time. And that is a beauty. When I go to Sierra Leone, I'm able to speak some Creole. So it's important that we also come from the basis where we don't see us and them, but as a partnership working. Yeah. And it is so strategic when you're doing advocacy.
The partnership works very well, especially when you give agency to the community. Yeah. It works well when you strengthen the agency of the community. Mm-hmm. Now, good people, this is such
interesting discussion to me. I don't know what you think. Do you want to throw in one or two thoughts? Nolene is waiting to take over the floor for a very important session. But I think it's important for us to hear experiences on advocacy that actually lead up to successes, that at the end of the year you can pick and say this worked. When you're doing the outcome harvesting, do you all do our outcome harvesting? We don't harvest, we just plant. Yes, when you're doing your outcome harvesting, you're thinking on what you have harvested because your advocacy plan was top notch. Anybody wants to say something to this power panel? I love the experiences I've gotten from how you connect the dot here, remaining focused on the goal. You know that what you're really pushing for is this issue, but you have to take this one along, take this one along, take this one along, take this. Is that how we work? Ruth, is that how you're working? Or do you feel like, I think we can use this one for Reverend. Here, Sharon. Yeah, Ruth and then Moses. Here, you have your.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nehemiah from Uganda, for that very good elaboration, and also Nana connecting from a different environment. We thank you for that. But I think one thing that has come across all of you that which we appreciate, that you can't do advocacy without constituency, without people that you're working with. But you must have